In today's video, we're plunging into the heart of a story about a woman who shattered every boundary she swore she'd never cross in one unforgettable, life-altering night. This isn't just a tale of seduction. It's about tension, truth, and the moment desire collides with hesitation. It's about choosing vulnerability over safety, standing bare in every sense, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Disclaimer: this content is for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. I never imagined I'd be here unraveling like this. If you'd asked me the day before, I'd have scoffed at the notion that I could cross a line I'd vowed to stay miles away from. But sometimes all it takes is one fleeting moment, a glance, a breath, a heartbeat to dismantle the rules you've built your life around. That night, something inside me released, not in a storm of chaos, but with a quiet clarity, like a knot slowly untying after years of being pulled tight. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. The only thing I felt was ready. The house was silent, almost unnaturally so. The only sound was the soft hum of the ceiling fan in the living room, casting lazy shadows across the hardwood floor as if it sensed something inevitable was coming. Something irreversible. Earlier that evening, he looked at me, not with words, not even a smile, but with eyes that lingered too long, heavy with unspoken truths. I could see it, the words he wanted to say trapped at the edge of his lips. His mouth twitched with hesitation. Fear perhaps, or pride, or maybe the weight of knowing that once we gave this thing between us air, it would never be contained again. This wasn't sudden. This tension had been simmering for months, maybe years. We'd always danced on the edge of something more. Hands brushing too long when passing a coffee mug. Glances that carried too much weight for mere friendship. Laughter that lingered too deeply. Sitting just a little too close on the porch swing. Every moment was a whisper of something unspoken, something we never dared name. Until that night, I stepped out of my bedroom. No words, no hesitation, no second thoughts, just bare skin, bare soul. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single lamp, shadows clinging to the walls like silent witnesses. He stood at the far end, frozen. When his eyes met mine, I saw the exact moment the rules we'd lived by dissolved. He didn't move at first, didn't speak. His gaze traced over me, then locked back on my eyes, not with raw lust, but with a stunned, almost reverent awe, like I was both everything he craved and everything he feared losing. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until the cool wall pressed against my back, and the heat between us began to ignite. Still, he didn't touch me. Not yet. His hands hovered, inches away, held back by invisible threads of caution, consequence, history. I could almost hear the battle raging in his chest. Touch her or walk away. Say it or keep pretending. But some lines once crossed demand you burn the map of who you thought you were. I'd already leapt off the edge. There was no going back. He leaned closer, his breath warm and unsteady, mingling with mine, close enough to kiss, but holding that impossible sliver of space between us. And then, just when I thought I knew what was coming, he whispered something. Something I wasn't prepared for, something that shattered the silence more than any touch could. But I'll pause there. What do you think he said? Would you have made the same choice I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments and vote in the poll. Should she push forward or step back before it's too late? Because trust me, what happens next changes everything. My name is Harper and I'm 38, living in a quiet coastal town in Maine called Camden. I moved here 5 years ago, seeking solace after a messy divorce left me raw. I rent a small house with a wraparound porch surrounded by salt air and pine trees. My life is simple. Work as a freelance editor. Walks along the harbor, the occasional book club with people I like but don't love. And then there's Mason. Mason is 32, a carpenter who lives 2 houses down. We met when he fixed my porch railing 3 years ago. His hands steady and calloused. His smile easy but guarded. Since then, we've built a quiet connection. Late-night chats over coffee on my porch, shared walks to the corner store, texts about nothing and everything. We were never just friends, but we never crossed into more. Always almost lovers, almost honest, always holding back. That night, though, I stopped holding my breath. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything we'd left unsaid. All the near confessions, the buried feelings, the restrained desires. Mason looked at me, his face a storm of emotions, longing, guilt, want, and beneath it all, fear. His hand lifted halfway to my face, fingers trembling. I thought this was it, the touch that would break the spell. But he stopped, his hand falling, the air growing denser. I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't just afraid of what came next. He was afraid of why he wanted it so badly, of what it might cost us both. Was he scared of me or of himself? What do you think? Would you stay silent or demand answers? Share in the comments. The wall was cold against my skin, but his presence was fire warming the air between us. Still no touch, still no words. Then, just as the tension felt unbearable, his phone buzzed. A single sharp vibration that sliced through the moment. He didn't move at first, but his eyes betrayed him. He was choosing me or whatever was on that screen. He reached into his pocket, glanced at the phone, and everything shifted. His body stiffened, his jaw tightened, the warmth in his eyes flickering into something colder, more distant. He looked back at me, not with desire, but with a heavy burden. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "Find out what?" The question clawed at my throat. This wasn't about lust or bad timing anymore. This was about secrets, real ones, the kind that fester in the dark until they're dragged into the light. My heart pounded, not with thrill, but with dread. He stared at me like he wanted to reach out but couldn't. Not because he didn't want to, but because touching me now meant confessing everything. And then he whispered that call. It was her. She's back. Her. The woman who'd shattered him years ago. He never spoke of her in full sentences. Only fragments, as if her name alone could summon her power over him again. She was back, and suddenly I wasn't the only one exposed in that hallway. Mason was laid bare, too, by a past he hadn't released. I steadied my voice stronger than I felt. "So what now? Do you run back to what broke you or stay and face what this is?" He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, thick with possibility and pain. Then he stepped forward, his hand finding my face, steady, certain, real. "I don't want the past," he said. "I want you." It should have felt like a fairy tale. It didn't, because just as I thought we were stepping into something real, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen and his face drained of color. "It's her," he said. "She's here downstairs." I braced myself for the inevitable, for him to run, to chase the ghost of his past, to leave me standing there exposed in every way. But instead, he did something I didn't expect. He turned off his phone, set it on the table, and looked at me. No fear this time, only resolve. "I don't owe the past anything," he said. "But I owe you the truth." He stepped closer, his forehead gently resting against mine. No rush, no fireworks, just breath, presence, truth. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of something raw, something real. But the truth wasn't simple. Over the next few days, Mason opened up about her, Vanessa, his ex-fiancée, who'd left him 4 years ago without a word, chasing a life she thought she wanted more. She'd returned to Camden, claiming she'd changed, wanting to reconnect. Mason admitted he'd been ignoring her calls for weeks, unsure how to face her, unsure if he could trust himself not to fall back into old patterns. But that night with me, he'd made a choice. Not just to stay, but to let go. We didn't leap into a romance. It wasn't that kind of story. Instead, we started building something slower, more deliberate. We spent evenings on my porch talking about fears, dreams, the weight of our pasts. I told him about my divorce, how it left me questioning if I could ever be enough for someone again. He shared how Vanessa's leaving had made him doubt his worth. We weren't fixing each other, just listening, seeing each other in ways we hadn't before. One night, as we sat under the stars, a bottle of wine between us, Mason reached for my hand. Not a grand gesture, just a quiet one, his fingers threading through mine. "I'm not promising perfection," he said. "But I'm here, and I'm choosing this as." I squeezed his hand, my heart steady for the first time in years. That's enough, I said. This wasn't a movie ending. No sweeping music or dramatic confessions. It was two people choosing honesty over fear, presence over ghosts. And maybe that's what love is. Not lightning bolts, but small, terrifying choices like turning off a phone when the past comes calling or stepping forward when every instinct screams to run. What do you think? Would you trust Mason after everything? Would you take the risk knowing the past was still out there knocking? And what happens next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think they'll make it, or will Vanessa's return unravel them? Sometimes the most seductive thing isn't what happens behind closed doors. It's what happens when you open them to someone who finally sees you.